Have you heard about Anchor? ANCHOR.FM is a app and website that lets you create podcasts for free. It posts them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything in one place: sound effects, lead in music, everything you need. Go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you. Okay, hello. This podcast, I had to really think hard about whether or not I wanted to even do this story, but it's probably one of the longer stories that I can actually tell. And I know at the time that it happened, I was very angry and annoyed by what happened. But I guess as the years have gone by, I've kind of shaken it off a lot, even though the after effects are still very much alive in this situation. But I'm going to share it with you all, and maybe, hopefully, you will walk away with knowing that you don't need to be treated any sort of way by anyone. I don't care who they are. So let's get started, shall we? I'm going to say it was around, well, let me say this. I have a cousin that lives about 30 minutes from me in a town called Duncanville. Now, this cousin and I are the same age. We're only a few months apart. I'm a summer baby. She's a fall baby. I remember when we were coming up, I didn't see her that often because she grew up in the Dallas area. I grew up in East Texas, a town called Marshall. And when we were little kids, I feel like we got along pretty well. You know, sometimes we talk on the phone, you know, things like that. And then as we got into, I'm going to say high school, because I think in high school, that's when, you know, you start driving and you have a little more independence. You can, you know, go places a little bit more and, you know, just be out on your own a little bit. Well, I remember being in high school and learning how to drive. She learned how to drive before I did. And I guess it's maybe part and parcel with living in a bigger city. You just pick up driving faster. Out where I lived, you know, there wasn't a whole lot to do. It's a small town. So if you need to go somewhere, you know, your parents will take you. So I was probably maybe 9 months to a year behind in driving when she was already driving. I remember when she was driving, and I would, my family, my parents and everybody, we would come to Dallas to see family who lived in this area. And she would be driving, and she never took me anywhere. She never wanted to go anywhere, do anything. And we were in Dallas. And I remember thinking, okay, that's strange, because we're sitting here and you're telling everyone about all these things that you're doing and places you go and people you see, you know, when you're out and about. But yet when I come around, nothing's ever going on. Nothing's ever happening. Oh, well, no one's there. No one's going to do anything. No one's doing anything tonight. So I always thought that was strange. Now, there were occasions after I learned how to drive. I was probably 16 and a half, somewhere in there. I started driving. I had a little job, a part-time job after school and on the weekends. And sometimes when my Dallas family would come to Marshall to visit, they would all, you know, caravan together. So my cousin did not have her car. So when she got to Marshall, she would call me, even though that wasn't really strange, because they would come to Marshall and she would call me. But now when she called me, it wasn't just to talk. It was, hey, cuz, what you doing? are you going anywhere? Blah 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 blah. And I remember I'm in a little East Texas town. She's in Dallas. I come to Dallas. There's nothing going on, nothing to do. She comes to Marshall, and she's like, well, let's go here. Let's ride here. Let's go. She knew a few other people in Marshall besides me, of course. You know, she knew a couple of my classmates because she met them through other extended family members. Oh, well, let's go to so-and-so's house. And, well, you know so-and-so, right? Well, let's go over there and do. I'm like, okay. I wasn't doing anything. So I jump in the car. I go pick her up. I pick her up, and we would drive to this kid's house. It was usually boys. She knew some boys that I went to school with because she, like I said, extended family members, neighbors or family members that she would kind of talk to would introduce her to different people. And so we would go to their house, we'd hang out, chill, whatever. And I didn't think anything, well, let's, I probably introduced her to maybe one or two people. And I didn't think anything of it because, that's my cousin. She's from out of town. This is my cousin, blah, blah, blah. I had no issue. I had no thought about it. I never met any of her friends when I would come to Dallas. She never introduced me to anyone. She never took me around anyone, right? So I remember at some point this extended family friend who had introduced her to this boy or that boy, she began driving maybe a year after me, because she was 1 year younger than the two of us. So there would be times when my cousin would come to Marshall. She wouldn't call me. I wouldn't even know she was in town. It might have been she came with family or something, and they made a quick turnaround and came back to Dallas that same day or early in the morning the very next day. So one day I'm sitting at home and my phone rings. I answer the phone. It's this extended family friend, the girl who was like a year younger than us. I pick up the phone and she says, "Is Christina there?" She didn't say hello. She didn't even acknowledge that I picked up the phone. And we had all known each other our whole lives. So I'm looking at the phone and I'm like, who is this? Oh, it's Q. And I said, do I need to remind you that Christina does not live in this house? And you didn't even say hello to me when I picked up the phone. Oh, I'm sorry. I just, something to the effect of, she believed that Christina was in Marshall at that moment, or that she was on her way, which is why she called my phone looking for her. And I let her know, well, I don't know anything about Christina coming to Marshall, and she doesn't live here, so there you go. And then I think I found out later that Christina had come down a few times, and she didn't even bother calling me. She didn't need to call me. She had this extended family member, Q, who was running her around town if she did not have access to her own, to her vehicle. Like if she caravan down from Dallas with other family members, she didn't have a car, where she was calling me and pretending like me and her were best cousins. She would just call Q now, and Q would drive her around, which is cool. I, at the time, had an after school and a weekend job. And on days that happened that she was in town and that she would call me, I would be like, no, I'm busy. I could be sitting there watching television. And she would call, and I'm like, no, I'm too busy for that. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I'm working today. Or whatever I told her. I didn't want to be around her. Well, fast forward to right after I graduated from college. It was still the status quo, pretty much, except when she would come to Marshall, I was not being her personal chauffeur. And she was sitting around talking a bunch of, oh, I went here, I went there, da, 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 da. And so I said to her, how come you never ask me if I want to go anywhere or do anything? You come to Marshall and I was riding you around. But I come up here and you act like the whole city of Dallas is dead. And I did it in front of all of our, family. It wasn't like a big crowd, but we were all sitting in this room together. Oh, we can go out. Yeah, we can go out. Matter of fact, we can go to this new club. It was called Purgatory. We go to this new club called Purgatory next weekend. And don't you say you don't want to go when it's time to go and da-da-da-da. And I was like, when have I ever? Well, you wouldn't know because you've never asked me to go anywhere. But you don't have to worry about me backing out. I said, let's go. It was my idea. So if you say we're going, then I'll be ready to go. So we had this date set for the following weekend. When the following weekend came, I packed a small bag because I lived further down in the southern suburb, boondocks, whatever you want to call it. I live further down, further south, an extra 30 minutes than I do now. And so I packed a little bag. I went to my aunt's house, and I was in the process of getting dressed to go to this club that my cousin Christina was gonna take me to, and we were gonna actually go out and hang out and do this club thing. How old was I? I was probably 24, 25. So I'm getting dressed. In the middle of me getting dressed, my cell phone rings, and it's dear old cousin Christina. And she's telling me that, she's so sick, and she's got a headache, and she doesn't think she is going to be able to make it to the club that night. And I was like, oh, okay then, well, feel better, blah, blah, blah. I hung up the phone. I continued to get dressed. When I was walking out the door, my aunt, whose house I was changing at, came and she said, okay, Mallory, you on your way out? And I said, yes. And I told her about the phone call that I had just had with Christina. And I said, but you know what? I'm going to go to this club, even though she says she's not going to be there. And I'm willing to bet you $5 right now Christina's going to be at that club when I get there. And my aunt Dorothy said, no, she wouldn't do anything like that. I don't think she would do. You think she would do that? I said, Aunt Dorothy, I'm going to go to this club tonight, and Christina is going to be there. She's going to be there. And so she's just kind of looking. She was like, okay, well. And so I got my purse, got in the car. I drove to Club Purgatory. I went into the club. I walked around. I looked around the crowds and everything. It was a nice, group of people there. And I'm just kind of, going in between floors and, checking out this and checking out that. There were some other girls my age there who were by themselves as well. There was like one or two of them that came alone as well. And so we just kind of sat with each other and stuff. So I decided, well, I'm going to go stretch my legs and go upstairs to the other part of this club and look around up there too a little bit more. So I go upstairs, I turn around, and on the dance floor was my old dear cousin Christina. She was standing right there on the dance floor. And I remember just going, what a piece of work. And I walked right over to her. She had her back to me. I patted her on the shoulder, and she turned around, and the look on her face when she saw me standing there, because she felt like, well, all I have to do is tell Mallory I'm sick and I'm not going to go to the club, and my little country cousin wouldn't dare go by herself just because she wouldn't go by herself, so I'll be safe. And of course, she tried to sputter out some lie about how her friends came over and drug her out of bed, kicking and screaming. And she didn't really want to come to the club, but her friends came and drug her out of bed and put her made her put her clothes on and brought her to the club. And I said, okay, that's a really nice story, but if that happened, why didn't you call me? Because as far as you know, I was still at our aunt's house. She didn't have an answer. Not only did she not have an answer, do you think she invited me to come and sit with her and her friends? Or even introduce me to the people that she came to the club with? Nope. And from that day, it was just like I said, it was like in 2005, 2006. It was right after I graduated from college. And she lives like 30 minutes up the road from me. I have not spoken to her ever since that night. I let people in the family know what she did, and that I thought she was a piece of garbage, and that she thought she was better than me, and that is why she did not want me to be around her and her friends. That is why she lied about being sick that night, and that is why I needed nothing else to do with her. I see her in the room, and it's like she's not there. I don't acknowledge her. I don't speak to her. I would have never treated her, and I never treated her that way. So I hope that all of you who hear this story know you don't let someone treat you like you're garbage, because she would have just been perfectly content walking around and pretending like me and her were still good and cool and blah, 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 especially around family. She is no good. She's up to no good, and I am not going to play around with her. And that is my story. Thank you.